It was probably my first year into seminary in Boston University, and I was asked as part of my work there to come and be the youth pastor at a youth and young adult service at a church in Connecticut. I went to the service, preached the sermon, had an opportunity to work with the choir and the leadership to plan the service as far as the look and feel, the message, the thrust of the service. Loved the experience. After preaching the sermon that day, I was approached by one of the parishioners in the church, a young lady, not much more than 20 years old. I peg her about maybe 18 or 19 years old. She didn't really say. She approached me after the sermon, came over to me, openly, with a smile on her face, an appreciation for the sermon. She thanked me for the words and for the point of the sermon, which was about love. And she said, "Pastor Rod, I have to ask you, does God love me? Does God love me?" And I had to step back for a moment and realize just how precious and how simple the words were, but just how meaningful they were for her to be able to ask a member of clergy if God loved her. I was so impacted. I'm not usually one to be silent. I usually have something to say all the time. But in that moment, I was pretty quiet. And I love the silence that we shared. I allowed the quietness to speak. She said, "Did you hear my question?" I said, "Yes, I heard your question, but I'm listening for the Spirit, for the right words to say." And she looked at me and she said, "You're listening for the Spirit?" I said, "Yes, because I'm not God. I don't get to decide. God decides who is loved. God decides who's included. And I'm so convicted to tell you that I believe God loves you. I believe that God includes you. I believe that you are a part of God's family." And she said, "Well, you should know that I'm gay." I said, "Great." She said, "You should know that I'm not so sure about my faith journey, or even if I want to be a Christian." I said, "Fine. It's okay. I'm searching too. I'm searching for my purpose. I'm searching for my goal in life. I'm searching for my next level in my ministry. I'm on a path just like you." And she so appreciated my humanity and my openness and my willingness to be real with her. And that's when I knew, as late as seminary, that I wanted to be a minister, that I was committed to being a part of this gospel and sharing love for one and all. As a transition pastor, as a youth pastor, as an interim pastor, an assistant pastor, I've had many hats in the parish over the years. And if there's one thing I've come to learn, is that people are their best selves when they're invited to be their best selves. And me as a pastor, I'm in a position not to force, not to cajole, not to make someone do anything. I'm simply called to invite folks to consider how and why they can be their best selves, whether it's a technique or an activity or a mantra, a hobby, a Bible verse, whatever it takes for one to see the possibility of themselves becoming better, more positive, more uplifting, more spirited. It's my job to guide and lead them down that path, to ask the provocative questions, to be a guiding presence. And that's what I enjoy most about serving in the parish, and it's something that I continue to do and hope to continue to do in my future as a pastor. I came to Southern California back in 2010. I had just finished my seminary years, and so I found a church. But unexpectedly, I found that church in Costa Mesa, California, about an hour and a half from where I lived. You know, at the time, I didn't expect that I'd even join that church. I visited once or twice. I didn't think I'd ever actually want to be a part of something like that long term. The drive was an hour and a half each way. But I fell in love. Fairview Church in Costa Mesa. I joined, I became a member, and for 4.5 years, I commuted an hour and a half back and forth from San Diego to Costa Mesa to be a part of this American Baptist church. Turns out, this church is also a UCC church. And so the pastor there, she's still there by the way, told me that she'd be willing to ordain me American Baptist. She made me a deal. She said, "Rodrick, I will ordain you American Baptist, but you have to promise to look at the UCC." Wasn't a hard promise to make. I was already driving back and forth between San Diego and Costa Mesa. I said, sure, why not? I was already in the game. But I'm glad I said yes, because after I said yes, she started to educate me about this beautiful and inclusive, diverse denomination we call the United Church of Christ. I learned about its history. I learned about its inclusive approach to different denominations coming together under one umbrella of love. I learned about how over the past 10 to 20 years, the denomination itself has been asking its own questions about how it can make a difference in the 21st century, how to make church relevant again. And it's arriving at all kinds of answers about justice and inclusion and spiritual practice. All these things that really inspire me in my own personal work as a pastor. I felt truly at home learning about the United Church of Christ. And so when I got ordained American Baptist in 2015, I immediately started learning about the UCC. I started taking the polity course. I had a psychological evaluation. I met with the folks at the association and the area conference offices. I really started to immerse myself in the experience. I went to annual meetings for the area conference. I truly wanted to learn and understand how the denomination works. And I can truly say that I'm at home in the UCC. And I'm at home not only because of the social justice focus, not just because of the spiritual practice interests. I'm at home because I'm a part of a denomination that takes seriously the ministry and the enthusiasm and the contributions of all the people. We're all ministers in the church, not just the pastor. We're all called to care for each other, encourage each other, work together, share and build something great together. That to me is what the UCC is all about. And that's why I decided to be a part of this home we call the United Church of Christ. I'm so grateful that I've joined a church in Laguna Beach where over the past 20 months, the church has not only prayed with me, but come to agree with me that our Christian path ought to be as diverse as the amount of folks who dot this planet. We should be a place that affirms many paths. And we do this through active wisdom, that is, justice work in our world. And we do this through spiritual exploration, that is, interfaith cooperation, learning about other faiths, persuasions, and backgrounds. That's the Christianity that we're trying to perpetuate here in Laguna Beach. That's the kind of church we're building in this community. And frankly, I believe that's the church that's going to be relevant in the century and centuries to come. A church that reclaims its faith as one of many paths and offers a place where justice is available for all, and we are free to investigate, reflect upon, and learn from the many diversities of opinions and ideas in our world. I'm so grateful for that. I'm so proud of that. That vision is what carries me forward as a pastor. Psalm 46 has an amazing ability to lead the church here in Laguna Beach on what I'm calling an intentional journey of opening its doors to the wider community and being that place of hope for one and all. What I mean specifically by that is I see us creating worship experiences, events, and small groups that speak to this idea of exploration and curiosity about spirit, justice doing in our world. I see us being that place where we don't just ask the questions, we try to live the questions. And when I see that verse, be still and know that I am God, that simply tells me that we can't fail. We can't fail because we're going to fling our doors open, say, y'all come, and create opportunities for all of us to share and grow and live together as one community. To me, that is what Christian community is all about. Yeah, we might disappoint people. Yeah, we may not do everything perfect. We may not have all of our T's crossed and our I's dotted all the time, but that's any community. We're human beings. If we have the simple desire to let our brokenness be mended and healed through God's love, there's nothing we can't do. So yeah, we're going to do justice events. We're going to do interfaith events. We're going to create amazing small groups that create community and create relationships and maybe even teach people a few new things from time to time. We're going to do all that here. But we do it because we know that by doing it, yeah, we'll grow. But even more than that, we'll be a better community, our best selves as human beings. I think the biggest one as of late is being adaptive, being willing to change. We have a summer camp over here called Pilgrim Pines. And typically, in my experience, when I've served as a camp counselor or a camp pastor, I was asked to pretty much create the worship experience, the musical offerings, the teaching moments. All those things were created by me, pretty much, not in a vacuum, but I was given pretty strong sort of freedom to create and do as I felt led. But the kids at Pilgrim Pines this year, they asked me to try something a little different. They came to me and said, Pastor Rod, we really don't want you to do all that heavy lifting as you've usually done. We actually just want you to help us think about how we can better care for ourselves mentally and spiritually and socially. Those things sounded good to me, but when I started to ask them what they wanted, what they were looking to get out of the experience, they said, well, we're not quite sure. We want to sort of see how it goes. We kind of want to adapt and see what comes from the 3-day weekend. Now, that didn't sit well with me because I'm a type A personality who likes to have everything organized 2 weeks in advance. So it didn't really make me feel all that comfortable, to be quite honest with you. But I felt God saying, Rod, this is a learning opportunity for you. They're asking you to come and be with them and to assess and listen and reflect and then teach, then offer based on what you're seeing and what you're hearing. Yeah, that was a challenge for me. I was forced to prepare and read and get as much as I could in my mind as far as ideas and activities and questions, but I couldn't really settle on my approach until I arrived and spent a day with the kids. Yeah, that was a great learning opportunity for me. That in ministry, you do have this desire to plan and be ready, but there's also a need to be present and to listen and to be adaptive, to be able to change and go with the flow, as they say. And I'm so glad that the kids challenged me to do that, because not only were we able to create a weekend that they felt was really authentic and really powerful for them, but they taught me a valuable lesson in that if I'm adaptive, if I'm flexible, if I'm willing to listen and reflect before doing, more likely than not, I'm going to be a better leader for myself and for my church, for those I care about, even my family. And so the power of adaptation is more evident than ever for me in my ministry. And I thank the kids at Pilgrim Pines for showing me that way. I'm also mindful of this idea of creating buy-in. You know, our denomination is a people-based denomination. The pastor is not so much the God who sits on the hill who makes all the decisions. That's not quite how our denomination works. And that has been a learning opportunity for me as well. Growing up in the Baptist church where the pastor pretty much made all the decisions and wasn't really accountable in the way that we're accountable here in the UCC. I must admit, I've changed. I have gone with the flow, if you will. And I've learned that a UCC pastor is a part of a community of ministers, a part of the faithful, not apart from the faithful. And so for me, I've had to be accepting of the real need to create buy-in, to really become a partner with the council and the trustees and the various committees who make up our church. They're not window dressing. They are integral, connected to, a part of the good work that we do here at this church. So creating buy-in, a huge aspect, very important for me in my ministry, and something I've continuing to live into even now as a pastor. And then finally, I'm mindful of my coaching training. I'm in training to become a coach. And coaching is a little different from counseling. Coaching takes seriously the importance of asking the right question, provocative questions. And that's something as a pastor I can not only continue to do, but improve at. That is, when I'm in a council meeting or a committee meeting or a worship meeting or even talking to my mom on the phone, the question is, am I able to ask the provocative question that gets us to a place where we're moving forward, where we're advancing, where we're doing better than perhaps we did before? Questions like, where is God in this? Are we faithful to our vision? Are we faithful to our mission? What do we need more of? What do we need less of? Is this the loving thing to do, or is there something else that perhaps we could do? Are we thinking about those who are less fortunate than we are? And if we are, how? Asking provocative questions. That's something I can continue to do and get even better at as a pastor. Because if I do that, I'm allowing our church to be its best self. Not forced, not controlled, but invited and given the space to grow into something better. Asking the right question. As a pastor, that's something I want to do. I mentioned earlier my appreciation for Scripture and how Scripture has helped me to get through some of the challenging and difficult times in my life and my ministry. Scriptures like Psalm 46. In addition to that, I love science. I love reading books that talk about our universe and what's happening in the stars and the atmosphere. What's God doing way up there, and what is God going to do way up there. I love reading about that, investigating that. It shows I'm a part of something larger. My faith is somehow grander, more alive, more full, because I'm looking at the universe broadly and not just myself. I love science. I think it's a partner to faith, not antithetical. I think questions about evolution and transformation and process, all these things are mere aspects of how one could look at their own faith journey. Me, for example, from being an evangelical to a pretty strong progressive. Me, from being that kid growing up in the Black Baptist preaching tradition to being part of a church where I preach only 20 minutes and not 45 minutes. Me going from being the guy who was at one point thinking about being a physician because he felt that medicine might be the place to go when he was 16 years old, to being the guy who decided ministry was where he was going to make his biggest mark in his life and feeling good about it each and every day of his life. I just think that science, like evolution, can be akin to faith and growth. And so when I read about it, I think I'm reading about the process that I'm currently going through as a human being. It's pretty exciting stuff from my perspective. In addition, I find real power in reading books. I'm reading a book now called Living on a Fault. It's by a woman who was challenged with mental health and other concerns in her life, and she somehow found hope through her challenge. She was able to love herself tenderly and with grace in spite of all the tough things happening in her life. And that reminded me that our humanity isn't perfect. We don't always have everything the way we want them. But we can somehow find hope in the people around us. For her, it was her psychologist. For me, it's my family. We can find hope in our activity. For her, it was writing a book. For me, it's being a pastor and being able to read and share and connect with others. We can find a sense of purpose in our world. For her, it was marching with women and for women's rights. For me, it's working for justice for as many communities and as many people as I can around our world. For her, it was campaigning for earth justice because she really cared for creation. For me, it's finding ways to bring in the LGBT community and show them that they're loved in a faith community. I really find a lot of parallels between her life and mine, and I find inspiration in her life for my life. And finally, I do something that I know a lot of folks might laugh at, but it is what it is. I simply love saying hello to cashiers and clerks in stores. I've made it a spiritual practice where now I will go to the mall, I'll go shopping, I will buy some Now and Laters or Jolly Ranchers or Starburst, and I'll go to the counter and ask the clerk, hello, how are you? And every now and then I'll have no response or a pretty tepid response. But sometimes people will actually stop and tell me who they are and how they're doing, and they thank me for asking. And then they ask me, are you a pastor? I just think that the real authentic approach to life is a spiritual practice. And I think that as a pastor, I gain resilience by being authentic and committed to practicing faith and hope for myself before others, whether it's through my playing, my music listening, my saying hello, my reading books by others. I just find value in connection, and for me, that's my spiritual practice. I think it would look like the village where all have a voice, all have a purpose, and all are included in the good work. No one can be excluded, because when we're all working together, there's something powerful, something amazing, something loving, something beautiful that comes out of being as one, serving and helping each other. Which reminds me of a symbol, a West African symbol called the Sankofa bird. I've always been inspired by that imagery because the Sankofa bird is the most peculiar animal. It's a mythical creature, I'll grant you that. But if we get past the mythical aspect for just a moment, we realize that the Sankofa bird is a creature that walks forward while looking back. Its head is literally that way when it's going that way. I find that to be very, very apropos for the idea of a cohort of colleagues there to support and encourage each other. Because we're each moving forward in our individual ministries and lives. No question about that. We probably have church experiences where we serve. We may have nonprofit organizations that we work for or support in some capacities. Some of us may be bivocational, meaning we're pastors, but we also have other jobs or careers in order to make ends meet. Some of us may not want to be in parish ministry at all. We may just want to serve nonprofits and do our good works that way. The point here is that we're on individual paths doing amazing work. But the reason why the Sankofa approach works for me is because while I'm doing all this good work individually, it's important to have folks behind me and beside me who can give me their experience, who can offer me their wisdom, who can let me know that everything's going to be all right, that this too shall pass, Rod, whatever this is, to ask the right questions of me when I'm thinking about what's next for me or what's next for my church. It's just really good to have those additional voices who can take me out of my process for just a few minutes, check in with me, see how things are, and ultimately help me to find my own way, asking the right questions. I just think that idea of the Sankofa bird and a Sankofa group of folks who are moving forward while looking back can be one of the most productive, one of the most life-giving things I could ever do. And so when I signed up for this cohort, when I signed up for the opportunity, I appreciated most the opportunity to be in a group of folks like me who are finding our way as leaders.